Well, let's turn our attention to what is going to be a talking point for a long time as we hurtle towards the 2024 elections. Parliament has passed the controversial Electoral Amendment Bill yesterday. Essentially, it allows individuals to stand for elections as independent candidates. 98 MPs who were against the bill, they were outvoted by those who were in favour. Those in favour were 232. Opposition parties and members of civil society are lashing out, though. Reaction not very good to it. They say the bill is the gravest insult to the country's democracy since 1994. Let's get a reaction now. Home Affairs Portfolio Committee Chair Mosa Chabane joining us this morning. Mosa, good to have you on eNCA. Appreciate the time. So there are those who are coming out, like, for example, Institute of Race Relations, saying that what essentially has happened here is independent candidates are now pointless come 2024. What's your reaction to all the criticism?
Morning, and thanks for your invite. Well, as the committee, we are resolved that we've engaged in a fair process of consultation. We've responded to the issues that have been raised by the Constitutional Court judgment. We've also made sure that we interacted with the Parliamentary Legal Service, the state law advisors, and also consultation with the IEC, which is an implementation agency for the election. So I think we were resolute in terms of the process that the committee has taken and the bill that has been put before Parliament, and Parliament has considered to refer to the National Council of Provinces.
So when it now comes to those who are saying that essentially Parliament is steamrolling ahead with this and is essentially diluting any further criticism and dialogue on the issue, do you get a sense that this is something that can still be discussed in Parliament before we get to 2024, the election, some 550 days away?
In our engagement in the consultation process, there were views expressed since the amendment bill was tabled before Parliament by the Minister of Home Affairs and subjected to this process which I've outlined of consultation. And at the time the bill was proposed to the Parliament, there was views that the bill was flawed by the NGOs, but in our consultations there were views that were carried that there must be changes in the amendment bill, in which we did interacted with that process. You are correct that the second stage of interaction with this process is the National Council of Provinces, where some of the issues will be carried, and that opportunity to engage in that process will also be allowed. The Constitutional Court judgment had allowed or directed Parliament to correct or the defect that is in the law that doesn't allow independent or individuals, adults, to participate in both the provincial and national assembly. And that is the intervention which the Parliament or the committee has been focused on. The other views that are being carried is that we ought to change the entire electoral system. And I think that we've given more reasons to the extent that it may not be possible to change the electoral system outside what the Constitutional Court has directed us to do. So I think we're satisfied in the manner that we've created a provision that allow adult citizens or those that qualify to be voted to participate in both the provincial and national elections.
I see that the defender of democracies, Duditsang Meti, I'm quoting EWN here, and I quote, Parliament did not sufficiently consult the public about the bill. Would you disagree with Duditsang Meti from Defender of Democracy saying not enough consultation was done?
Look, part of our democratic dispensation is that any person has a right to air his or her views in any subject matter that we're engaging in a discourse, and that we encourage that discourse. What we can account the process which Parliament has outlined for any committee when it engages to interface with the members of society or stakeholders. We did invite members for written submissions, and I think that we received overwhelming written submission in line with what the amendment bill has entailed. Secondly, we did oral submissions, and NGOs, and part of those that are raising this matter that they're arguing that there was no sufficient participation, they did sufficiently contributed to enhance this bill. Thirdly, we conducted a nationwide public hearing participation. You'll know that in each province, we conducted 3 public participation, and members of society attended, contributed to this amendment bill. We came back, interacted with the deliberations on the issues that we ought to go back to the public to consult further. We requested Parliament to allow the committee, in terms of the rules of Parliament, so that we're able to consult on substantial issues, material issue changes that the committee ought to consider. We opened the window, and that was sufficiently responded by members of the community. Others have considered to the process that we engage. Obviously, others have subjected rejection in the process that they ought to, Parliament consider the broader constituency electoral system.
Let me ask you this in conclusion, Mr. Chabane, if you don't mind for a moment, because speaking to Herman Pretorius, Institute of Race Relations, about 20 minutes ago, this is all incredibly complicated, and I can't help but feel many members of the public, and Herman made this point as well, won't actually understand how this works. It essentially disempowers the public, even though you do this for a living. And those who follow this very closely will understand exactly what is going on. So let me end the conversation by asking you this. When you do the maths, essentially what you have is an independent candidate who has to get twice as many votes and work twice as hard as any political party simply to have a standing for their constituency. They're being set up to fail, aren't they?
No. That is not the attitude of the amendment of the bill that has been passed. You will know that is the first time that independent or individual will participate in both the provincial and the national elections. And they must have the process to register and to demonstrate your participation in both the provincial and national election. The current political parties have already demonstrated in the past elections in terms of the process that they ought to participate in these elections. There are regulations that are defined by the IEC in terms of the political parties that must participate. What the committee and the IEC had engaged is that they're going to revise their regulations in terms of the new political parties that must participate. And the threshold of these political parties to participate in both the provincial and national election may not be the same as those ones that are required in by the portfolio committee. The amendment bill, if I manage to conclude, as it was presented by the minister, it has a threshold of 50%. In our deliberation, we have taken that threshold to 30%. We further discussed on the open window, which we have outlined earlier on, that the Parliament ought to request for extension of 14 days. We had to concede to, because of the fairness that individuals must able to participate freely and fair, but the provisions on the law must make it conducive for them to participate, to agree, resolve on the 20% threshold. But we must say and re-emphasize that the IEC will ought to revise the regulations in terms of how the new political parties will meet the threshold. The opportunity also be deposited in terms of the process that the NCOP is going to undertake henceforth.
Yeah. I appreciate your time, Mosa Chabane. It's a very complicated process and system to follow, and there's going to be, I'm sure, lots of debate around this, and we'll obviously hear from the IEC and get reaction. But I appreciate your time in joining us. Home Affairs Portfolio Committee Chair, Mosa Chabane. So you can hear so far already we've had 2 very different versions of interpretation around the Electoral Amendment Bill. So we're going to get lots more reaction, but I think it's so important as well that also there's an election and voter education when it comes to a new system like this, which no doubts, of course, we'll have here on eNCA.